Sorry, Colin. Just won't work. Can you help, Phil? Hello.
And sorry about the delayed start there.
No, I don't know. It was another technical glitch. Now, the other day, I thought I felt in the mood for some intellectual stimulation. I thought I'd go to the theatre. So I went to Jermyn Street and wandered down, and eventually I found a theatre. The sign on the door said Bona Theatre. So I knocked and I went inside. Hello, is anybody there?
Ah, hello, Mr. Kane. How bona to vada, dear Dolly Oldie again. Yes, I understand you're looking for some intellectual stimulation.
Well, I have some time on my hands, so I thought this might be the place. Do you have anything on that I might like?
Oh, yes. Well, we've got the 7 Ages of Omi. That's your actual Shakespeare and your actual poloni. Yes, Nanti Raya, Nanti everything. Or indeed, there is another wonderful Bona production that I might add called Cult Figure Kenneth Williams, a biography, a celebration of the cult figure that was indeed Kenneth Williams.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure I'm familiar with Kenneth Williams. Do you think I'd enjoy this production?
Oh, it's fantabuloso, yes. Well, you seem like a very intellectual person.
Well, it's very kind of you.
If you are in need of stimulation, I can stimulate you very well. I can assure you in my hour and 40 minutes. There's not a dry seat in the house, I can assure you.
Now, my good friend who normally comes to the theatre with me, is Phil Dave. Do you think that Phil would enjoy what's going on at Bona Theatre in Jermyn Street?
He's your friend, is he? Yes, a bit like Gordon. He's my friend as well, you see. Yes, he accompanies me to various places, you see. Yes. Oh, I think he'd love it. Oh, look at him, yes. Look at the Nafomi. I've just seen Phil pop up. Lovely. Nanti Raya, yes. Come to our hair salon, darling. Yes, we'll stimulate those follicles for you. Yes, shove a couple of creepers up your trellis.
Possibly a little too late on that front, but let's not dwell on that.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Show with Russ, Phil, Dave, and the lovely Colin Elmer. Let me just put a little bit of context around all of this for you. As you know, I'm a huge fan of the Jermyn Street Theatre, wonderfully run by my business partners. So I have no vested interest in the theatre, by the way. I've just been a fan for 35 years. Jermyn Street Theatre, which is in Jermyn Street, although I did try and explain to an American visitor this week who came in, I met for the first time, that it wasn't German, and kept pronouncing it, oh, you're going to the Germain Street Theatre? No, it's not Germain, it's German. Well, that's with the G. No, it's with the G. I gave up. Anywho, I'm a huge Kenneth Williams fan. Read all of the diaries, all the letters, all the autobiographies and the biographies, and I was thrilled when I saw that the production sounds like Kenneth. I was thrilled when I saw that the production was a one-man show called It Is This Cult Figure with, as you can see, Colin Elmer. And I went this week and it was fantastic. So I drove poor Penny Horner mad, and Colin is here. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, guys.
The show was sold out completely. Wasn't a seat to be had. And we were chatting on the phone, and Phil, are you familiar? I'm joking because I've never discussed. I didn't even have time to tell you. Are you familiar with sort of Kenneth Williams and Round the Horn and Beyond Our Ken and all of that, or was you way too young at 36? Hater.
I love it when people say you're too young to know somebody. Look, I'm fairly sure all of us living were too young to know Henry VIII, but we know who he was. So I don't really think age is a barrier. I don't think age is a barrier as such. Look, let me put it this way. I obviously am familiar with Kenneth Williams. I know about him, but purely his work with Carry On films. I wouldn't say that anything beyond that I was that sort of aware of.
You see, when I was growing up on a Sunday radio, which got me into radio, Sunday lunchtime, I'd sit with my mum and dad, and Round the Horn would come on, and we'd sit and we'd collapse and we'd all get out of it different things. What was your first introduction to Kenneth Williams, Colin?
Well, funnily enough, probably similar to both of you, actually, with Phil. Certainly the Carry-Ons are Kenneth's, I would say, lasting legacy in terms of popular culture, because, of course, he appeared in 25 out of, I think, the 31 Carry-On films that were produced in his lifetime. They went from 1958 to 1978. So 20 years of these films being produced, sometimes up to 3 a year, which when you think about it is incredible, you know, that sort of turnover time. I think they're all shot in about 6 weeks, etc. So yeah, definitely the carry-ons. And when I was very young, I remember my dad had one of those. We always had sort of cassettes and CDs of things like Round the Horne, Hancock's Half Hour, as well as the Goon Shows, Navy Lark, all that kind of thing. And I recognized this voice, this very unique voice that often, you know, I say voices often was the case, because he would go from everything from the standard upper class RP standard voice to the sort of Cockney or the "oh hello, thought you a little finger through mine, good evening," to the "hello me dearios, welcome, I've got a lugubrious ditty for you all here for your surmise." So all of these different amazing voices, and of course through that, I recognize this guy.
I'm your best audience. I'm sorry, I just
that's absolutely fine. No, you can come again, Russ, please do.
Well, thank you. Can I just jump in here now, in case you're wondering why we're doing this? We're a radio station about mental health and well-being. Number one, I think it's important to support the arts. Phil and I talked about this a lot, especially through lockdown when we really missed it. Number two, I think that theatre and comedy is so important for your mental health. I think without a laugh, without comedy, you know, we live in a humorless, horrible world. And I think comedy becomes increasingly important. So that is my excuse for inviting Colin on, apart from the fact I just wanted to. So that's all there is to it. Now, I wanted to jump in there. Tony Hancock did not get on with Kenneth Williams eventually, and he hated that, you know, that Sid Snide character, the one you do that wonderful thing when the mechanic is on the plane, one of my favorite sort of radio sketches. He didn't like him though, did he? He didn't like him at all.
Well, I think they got on, certainly intellectually, because they were both very interested in quite similar subjects, philosophy. I mean, they're both very intellectual, very cerebral people. And in some cases, that was Hancock's downfall, because he was a very self-reflective person, which, of course, in healthy doses is a wonderful thing. But he would sort of try to pick himself apart so much. I think there was a story that Kenneth Williams told about he was visiting him in the hospital once, and he was surrounded, he said, by all these books, you know, Wittgenstein and various philosophers, and Hancock was trying to sort of work through life, work out, you know, and said to Kenneth, you know, what, you know, what's the whole point, Kenny? Why are we all here? You know, I mean, what's the point? You know, what if life's all a joke? And he said, well, if life is all a joke, well, why don't we make it a good one? And
which is your final line. And I love that. That's your final line. You thought I didn't pay attention. It was a spoiler alert. And then he dies in the end. Who cares? Uma Thurman wanders on. Who'd have thought? Pushes
exactly.
Uma Thurman comes in with a syringe, shoves it into Kenneth Williams' chest, and then dances.
That's it, yeah. And then she does
it was a strange twist to the show, Colin. I wasn't expecting
Not the first time he's felt a prick.
Hey!
Very good.
Now, you have to have fun with this. I'm going to just say this to you, Colin. Do with it what you will. She has purple hair in real life. Leslie Demesa. I'll let you run with it.
Hello, Jim. Vada Bona, the only guest. Oh, I see. We've got a little pop-up here on the.
We have pop-ups all the time. Yes. Well, she has purple hair.
Well, lovely, a purple riot, Ducky. Yes, Bona to Vadio Dolly Oldie. Yes, thank you for your message, dear.
Yesterday, she got an honorary degree, so I'm very proud of her. She's a great pal. She's a personal friend. She's on the show a lot.
Well, congratulations, Leslie. That's fantastic.
Yeah, there you go. And what do we got here? Well, Nelly Yarda to her. I don't know what that means. What does that mean?
Oh, look, you're asking me to be the Polari glossary now, aren't you?
Well, I was hoping so. You know, dictionary corner, Polari corner, we can call it now.
Nelly Yarda to her pronouncing. I think that means well done to your pronunciations, basically.
Now, you explain in the show, but because this is, I find it interesting. At the time of the early shows, of course, being gay was illegal. Homosexuality was a crime. You think back on that now, you think, what the hell?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to believe. And so explain about Polari, because we always find it amusing, but there was a much more serious side to it.
Very much so. I mean, polari, for example, is not just, it goes back, a long way throughout history. It's often used by sort of Romany gypsies and so forth. It was essentially popularized in many ways in the early mid-20th century as a form of communication for a lot of gay people to be able to talk in public as a sort of coda, an underground coda, so that people around them who maybe, were not sympathetic to their way of life, which is not a choice, it is something that you are born with, your sexuality, that they could not detect that they were having a conversation about, dare I say, gay matters. And were able to identify each other. So if you could say to somebody that you suspected may be gay, "Oh, are you Bona?" Meaning are you lovely? But you could drop in these words in conversation, like "Bona to vada, dolly old eek" means lovely to see your wonderful old face again. And "look at the naff omi" means be careful. That man there is usually you might say dull. The word naff might mean dull. It's also an anachronism for not available for answers on the postcard, please.
The Keynsham, that's Keynsham. With me, Horace Batchelor, with your infrascore method. No, infradraw method, wasn't it? Things from our childhood.
So yeah, it was a wonderful and necessary way for gay people to communicate without the possibility of their being possibly beaten up by those around them. These were really dangerous and hazardous times. And
one of the things that Phil always
but it does make me think though that surely someone would have picked it up. That's the thing that I don't quite get my head around, is that yes, okay, to have this sort of slang, this polari, but it just baffles me that no one who wasn't from the community didn't pick it up and understand that they were obviously trying to talk in code.
Well, I think obviously, I mean, not everyone was going around sounding like Kenneth Williams. I will add that. You can, it is possible to use coda and language in the dare I say, the le carré sense, and just use it as a sort of very subtle form, I guess.
Well, here's a compliment for you. It's from Leslie Ian Jones. I haven't heard a better Kenneth Williams. Wish he was around to chat with you. Would be fun. Can you imagine Phil, if Kenneth Williams was a guest? Oh my God, that would be heaven.
I believe that we wouldn't get a word in edgeways.
No, but how lovely would that be? That would be great. One of the things also that I wanted to get you on the show, apart from the fact that I enjoyed it so much, is that, and we've already seen comments coming in. Here's a lovely comment coming in from, by the way, this is from Northeast America in New York State. Azadon Brown, very senior in the therapeutic community over there. Hi, Aza. Welcome. You probably have no idea who Kenneth Williams is, but go with it. Interestingly, just to digress for a second, when we were chatting on the phone, you thought, well, everyone who came to the German Street Theatre, and you finish on Sunday, I believe, is that right?
Yes. Matinee on Sunday at 3:00.
Okay, so there's three shows left. Grab a ticket if you can. It's the German Street Theatre in German Street. One of the things that you thought everybody was just big fans of Round the Horne and Kenneth Williams, etc. There was a guy sitting next to me, random guy, got chatting. He had never heard of Kenneth Williams. He was brought along by some friends, had no idea. And he was laughing away like a drain. And at the end of the show, I said, "Do you see what the fuss is about?" And I go, "Oh, now he'd never seen the Carry On film. Never. English guy. Never seen the Carry On film, never heard of Kenneth Williams."
There's a feat in its own right that you're from this country and you've never actually been exposed to a Carry On film in your entire life, no matter how old you are.
Let me ask, I'll come back to my original question in a second. Why is it with humor? Again, Phil and I have talked about this with a lot of guests. We talk about it when it's just the two of us on a Friday and then Chantal joins us. Why is it we've gone from Carry On films, which you could say was good old-fashioned British fun, to this sort of puritanical, you can't laugh at anything? How have we traveled so quickly to such a dark place?
Well, I mean, that's a huge question. And you're talking sort of, over sort of 50, 60 years, well, 70 years really of comedy, and how things, I'm always of the opinion that things, especially artistically, they develop. They don't always progress, but they develop, and tastes and tones change. It's something that I mentioned in the play, is that the Carry On films were kind of a social document in their own right, in that they start off post-war England, 1958, Carry On Sergeant was the first film, and they end in 1978, 20 years later, with their last film was called Carry On Emmanuel, which was pretty
horrible, absolutely horrible.
It was dreadful, and all the cast, they're all looking rather sort of tired, and the jokes are really jaded. So they go, taking this out of context a little bit, they go from this sort of rather gentle family comedy set all about things that, the Carry-Ons are always set in context that people would know, either in a hospital, the army, some form of institution, a school, and basically going throughout the 50s into the 60s, sexual revolution, etc., and then trying to keep up with the more racy comedies like the confession films with Robin Asquith, all that kind of thing. And so they try to appeal to a younger, sexier audience, and it didn't really work. So in that sense, they're an interesting social document. Now, why have we gone from, dare I say, well, you can say anything, what, as you've just said, Russ, the kind of, good old-fashioned humor, to you can't say anything now? That, I guess, we're talking really about the cancel culture, aren't we? That we can't really say anything without being afraid of being cancelled. And I'm not sure I can even answer that question. I always just try to remain grounded and think, well, you've got to contextualize comedy. You've got to contextualize anything, be it comedy, drama, tragedy. It reflects the time and the period in which it is produced. Now, obviously, there are certain things like, maybe Love Thy Neighbor, or there was an awful sitcom that was made in the 80s, I think, called Heil, Honey, I'm Home, which was about sort of Hitler.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of
my God.
Apparently the producer said it's not going to be a sitcom, it's going to be a hitcom. I think they got one pilot out before it was completely it was dreadful.
By the way, yesterday, and Phil,
I can't understand why it didn't take off.
It's a mystery. The strangeness of life, I felt. Yesterday, I saw something which I was going to send to you, Philip. And in Germany, and I'm not making this up, they've brought out a range of wines, and the label are huge pictures of Hitler. I'm not making this up. And they're in the Germans, they learnt nothing, for Christ's sake, and they're in the German supermarkets. Oddly enough, some people are complaining. And
really?
I don't mean it's like a little subtle thing. It's like the whole freaking label is Hitler in various poses. I mean, if I'd have gone into that suit, I swear to God, I'd probably lost my temper and just smashed them onto the ground and walked out. Can you believe people doing that?
I'd like to know what the marketing manager or the marketing director for that particular brand is doing now.
Well, I tried to get hold of him, but he was in a bunker.
Yes, exactly.
Looking at the map of Poland. And massing on its
makes
border.
you wonder what grape they use as well, maybe like Bergen-Belsen or something like that.
They didn't trample presumably they didn't trample the grapes. They just goose stepped over the grapes to just crush. It's just incredible. It's just things that people do. Now, Kenneth Williams himself, which is another reason that I really did want you on Men's Radio Daily Show, was a very tortured. The huge disparity, again, something that Phil and I have talked about with many, many guests over the years, between the public face and the private person. And he was very tortured. Those diaries are difficult. Some passages of them are very difficult reading.
They are. They're heartbreaking. It has to be remembered that the diaries published, I think, in about 1994, were edited very sensitively by Russell Davies,
yes,
the broadcaster and journalist. So I think essentially what you've got, because he was a diarist for over 40 years, I don't know what percentage, it's probably about, 20-30% of the diaries have been published. In some cases, that is because in terms of libel, I think there are certainly diaries that will not be published, certainly for another good few years yet, because certainly not even available to the public, because they're currently now they're residing at the British Library, they did belong to Kenneth Williams' close friend and neighbour, Paul Richardson, who's a lovely guy who I've met on one occasion. And he gave them to the British Library. And I believe researchers can look at the diaries, but there are still a few that are held back because, of course, there are people still living who would not want certain things that Kenneth wrote about them being in the public domain, as it were. Sorry, I have a habit of going off on a tangent, so you'll have to bring me back.
Please carry on. It's a very, very interesting answer.
But no, going back to your question about his tortured nature. Yes, he was a man, I think, as Bill Kenwright described him, the producer Bill Kenwright, who was a great friend of Kenneth's. He was someone of full of contradictions. And the diaries, as they are published in their current form, do even show that. In that one day he will go, "Oh, I want to die. It's awful. I'm feeling so depressed," and obviously, really, actually feeling that. I'm not sort of sending that up. That's actually how I felt. And the following day, it was, "Oh, what a lovely day. The sun is shining. It's been raining in the last night, so that everything feels cleansed and lovely." He was someone who, I suppose, fitted that mold of what used to be called manic depression, now bipolar disorder, where he would go up and down. I think, as Giles Brandreth once described, sometimes would go in a sort of cycle, not just every day, but sometimes every hour, every minute. You're never quite sure where you were with him on a personal level. So he was someone who was both, yes, full of contradiction, and his moods just seemed to elevate and go down on a tangent.
Was he in? Did he find his again? And we're looking at some news shows which will cover this, not specifically like Kenneth Williams, but we're looking at. I've got some meetings next week. Was he embarrassed or uncomfortable or couldn't face his sexuality because he never? I mean, these days, what the hell? But he never came out as a homosexual, did he? Ever?
No, he never said outright, certainly publicly anyway, that he was gay. I'm sure, obviously, he did so with friends and well, certainly with friends, not necessarily with family. I don't know. He was a good friend of Joe Orton and Kenneth Halliwell, the playwright Joe Orton, who himself was the opposite of Kenneth Williams. He would go off to Tangier for sort of 6 weeks at a time and have a very, very fun time out there, when, of course, in the 60s, when it was still illegal in this country until 1967, 68, that ban, as it were, was eventually lifted, although that didn't make it really any easier for a lot of gay men. You know, there was still a huge amount of prejudice, as there is still today. But Kenneth would go out to Tangier, but I think he would maybe sort of dip his toe into the waters, so to speak. But, you know, Joe Orton would be, you know, doing everything that he could. Kenneth, I think, Williams, I should say, found it very hard to come to terms with his sexuality. And I think that was probably the case for many people of that time. He was from a working class background, although, you know, for people from upper class, whatever class background you were from, didn't matter. It was extremely hard. His father was a very strict Methodist, hated anything fanciful. He was a real man's man. I mean, when Kenneth was a young kid, you know, he bought him a present. He was what's this? It's a pair of boxing gloves. Put them on your fist and fight your own battles, son. Which, in his own way, he was trying to help his son, you know, with bullying in school. But obviously, Williams was, you know, not interested in that at all. He just plopped them down in his father's lap and went, "No, thank you. I don't think I'd like that at all," and would stomp off. And it's such a shame that he didn't have a closer relationship with his dad.
He was very close with his mum, though, wasn't he?
He was very close with his mum. In fact, he lived pretty much not with his mother, but always within about a mile of each other. He always lived in the same square mile of London most of his life. I think for the last 20 years, his mother and Williams lived next door to his mum. So he had a very close relationship with his mother. In some ways, it sort of reflects that Peter Pan element, I think, of never really being able to let go of his childhood, never really finding an adult relationship for himself. I think there was certainly one person quite early on in his life, an Australian guy, who I think Kenneth loved very, very much. But again, it would get to a certain point and he would almost kind of self-sabotage and thought, I can't go any further than this. He wouldn't allow him. I think Barry Took once said he wouldn't allow himself to be happy. And I find that so heartbreaking.
But so many people are like that. That's not the sole property of Kenneth Williams. So many people are like that. Here's a comment. Philip, would you be so kind,
Your eyes are not what they once were, dear boy. Kimmy says we saw a fascinating documentary he did of growing up, or his growing up, I should say, where he lived, and clips of him singing at the piano in the local pub. Why should people grumble if they know what to expect of a comedian?
Well, that's modern life. That's what, isn't it? That's modern life. You got to complain about it, bloody everything. Quick question is this: you touch on the show that his work I mean, it's not a secret, so it's hardly a spoiler. His film work dried up, the theatre work dried up, TV work dried up, and he became one of the first people who was famous for being famous.
Yes,
and he railed against it, whereas every freaking idiot that you see these days in the media, you think, well, what do they actually do? And the answer is, of course, they do the square root of F all. They don't do anything. They're just famous for being famous. But he was like, and he hated that.
He did indeed. And yes, it's when you ask kids these days. Sorry, that sounds I sound like such an old fogey. When you ask kids these days, honestly, the youth of today. But
I was talking to young.
They don't know they're born.
Yes, quite, Phil. It's something, I think, especially with a lot of again, not sounding like a technophobe, social media platforms. People are famous almost instantly overnight now. You do something incredible, or not even incredible. You do a couple of TikTok videos.
I was going to say, I wished it was incredible.
They're not incredible, Colin. They're shit.
It's awful. No, they think within their own context it's incredible.
Absolute shit.
It's absolutely.
There's nothing going on. There's nothing going on. There's a thing. I watch YouTube instead of TV. I'm going to bring on, by the way, because I know, talking about being famous for being famous, ladies and gentlemen, it's only Chantal Ricard's OBE.
I'm not famous.
You are in my world.
For anything.
In my world,
you're a legend in your lunchtime.
Yeah, famous in her own lunchtime.
Oh, bless. I'm not even famous in my own home. You just need a couple of kids to pull you straight back down to earth.
Oh, absolutely. Totally.
Or a dog.
If I may say, I have no idea whether or not this constitutes as impertinence. That's a mightily acceptable dress you are donning today.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's sexual harassment. Sue him. That's sexual harassment. That is virtual rape.
No, it's not.
That's an attack. That's a physical. She's going to be shocked. She's now going to have PTSD. The whole thing. It's going to be awful.
Take it as a compliment, Chantal. I didn't even get
to do that, Colin. We can't.
I'm going to be sued for the cost of the therapy. So
the whole therapy thing. She won't be able to work for 5 years.
You've made my day, Phil.
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Colin, say how nice that fringe looks now it's grown out. Just.
It's absolutely boner, yes. You've been to my hair salon, haven't you? It's lovely, yes. You're not follically challenged at all. Beautiful, lovely.
I think, Kenneth, she must have gone to your father's barber's.
Yes, indeed, Kenneth Williams. You do know the history of our Ken. Yes, his father was a barber. I can't remember which street it was on now, but yes, he was
Marchmont Street.
Fleet Street.
Marchmont Street. That was it. Yes, I should remember. It's in the.
If you need a stand-in,
yes, please.
Get Penny Horne to phone me.
I need a prompt. Yes.
Oh, I'll add.
The accent is excellent.
You did that made me die. It's a very difficult play.
Well, as I said earlier, I can do a good ad lib given 3 months' notice.
Now, you were saying, Chantas, and thank you for your email. More of that another time. Bless you. And thank you. I'm very honoured. Now, you were saying that he was a great panelist on Through the Keyhole, which, of course, you produced for many years.
Indeed, he was. He only did the first series. Funnily enough, it didn't really suit him somehow. I mean, he was very good, but when he was sort of forced to go on to something as formulaic as that. Somehow it didn't give him enough breathing space, I don't think. So he did the first series. He didn't come back for any of the series after that. I did meet him, in fact, a couple of times at various events in London, as I'm sure you did as well, Russ.
No, never met him. Never, ever met him.
Ah, no, I met him and I thought he was absolutely charming, but actually quiet, a gentleman. Which I didn't expect, because of course I'd grown up with all the Carry On films and I thought he was going to be wild and extravagant, and actually he wasn't. He was really quite gentle and quite subdued in many ways.
It's like Kenny Everett. Everyone expected Kenny to be like, hello dear, and all that, and when you met him he was like the quietest, nicest, most subdued guy. Nothing, which is the only way you can get, I honestly
what are the chances?
You can get through. Oh, the greatest. The greatest. I never thought I would ever meet my radio idol, Kenny Everett, let alone work alongside him. It was just the weirdest, extraordinary.
Did you?
Oh, yeah, Kenny.
I didn't realise that.
Well, we were both at Capitol together.
Oh, of course you were.
And then I took
I don't know why you
his
didn't tell us that before.
Are you at Talk TV? Because are you these days, Phil? Are you at Talk TV?
Well, I'm not today. I'm not.
Rebecca and all the gang there.
No, I'm at home today.
I can see that. And may I say, and how dare you insult all the hundreds of guests we've had? We're like, oh God, you've got bookshelves, because we do a routine. Look at you. What are you? First thing you do? You put up. It looks beautiful there.
We like a bookshelf.
You're very kind. Thank you. Hey, look, do you know what? It's not that. I always used to say thank you. I used to tell people thank you for being original by not having a bookshelf behind. I'm very happy to admit I'm not original by any stretch of the imagination.
You are.
And I didn't say that. I don't
I've known you many years. They don't come more original than you.
I agree.
No, thank you.
They don't. You
far
are
too kind, and I know I owe you an invitation for dinner. Thank you.
Yeah. Don't let it linger too long, fella. Don't let it linger too long. This is from Kimmy Lashmar. Rush stepped in for Kenny Everett had to go off. Kenny Everett used to do a Saturday morning show on Capital Radio. He had to do a lot of TV work. He wasn't available. And so the bosses at the time said, all right, well, you can do. I was terrible. I'll be absolutely honest. It was shocking. It wasn't my forte at all. But I wanted to give it a go. So for a few months, I stepped in with Russ Kane's, Russ Kane's In-Flight Entertainment. It was absolutely garbage. I tried my best. It just wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. I had a producer. I got to tell you,
who came up with that? That's brilliant.
That was me. I just called it Russ Kane's In-Flight Entertainment. And I had a producer called Eddie Puma. That was his real name, Eddie Puma. He's died now. He's a very charming guy, but he was a little bit sort of vague. So in those days, everything was physical. So you'd have a physical 45 to put on the record player to start the show, and all the jingles. Everything's computerized, as you all know now. But then you had physical, what we knew as 8 tracks. You had to press it to play the adverts and all of this. As I walked in, I was absolutely terrified. I was following Alan Freeman, the god of radio, who was the loveliest man.
This was Pick of the Pops, wasn't it?
Not off, all right? Pop pickers out of Unit 1 into Unit 2. And how about a little bit of Chantal Ricards, all right? And don't forget your Brentford nylons. And I was terrified. My heart was thumping. I really thought I was going to be sick. And I'm waiting for Colin to walk in as my producer to hold.
Oh, what? Did he smell something?
Yeah. And he's got the record. And I'm looking at just a felt disc on a turntable. There's nothing. And I thought, I don't know what to do. I was so scared.
A squeaky bum moment, as we call it.
It was beyond squeaky bum. Let me tell you, it was like in your anecdote, the person who had the watermelon. I'll leave it there and I won't spoil it. That's how bad squeaky bum that was.
It's probably more like leaky bum.
Yes, you've got that. A quick question.
There is an image for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloydski. I'm glad you're enjoying it, and see you lunch soon, please. This is from Kimmy, and then we get on to all the reviews and everything like that with Chantal. You played my Robert Palmer request. Oh my God, this is how people remember. Kimmy Lashmar. This must have been 35 years ago.
Wow.
Easy. And Kimmy's going, you played my Robert Palmer. How do people remember these things?
I thought that was aimed at Colin. I was going to say, why is he playing
in the middle of the Kenneth Williams one-man show? And here's Robert Palmer.
And now, here's a track from Pop. You could just imagine it now, couldn't you?
A little bit of power.
Yes, I believe he's some contemporary singer. I have no idea who he is. Not a contemporary of Mozart. I know that all either.
What's Colin's plans for the future? Says Kimmy Lashmar. What are they?
Have some.
Why has he been fired? That's a bit harsh.
Yes.
I think we could.
Kimmy, do you know something that Colin doesn't know?
My check's in the post. Yes.
Yeah.
Penny
wants to speak to you at 3 o'clock. You don't want to meet her.
Penny. There's your P45, love. Now sling your hook.
Yeah.
My plans for the future. Well, we've got another tour lined up for next year. We've with the Apollo Theatre Company, which produces cult figure Kenneth Williams. I often say that I should change my actor's name to Renter Ken for the last few years, because that's what I'm. Yes, there we are. There's the poster. Cult figure Kenneth Williams, directed by Tim Astley. We've been doing various radio shows live on stage over the years. So we've done Hancock's Half Hour, we've done the Goon Show, and I played Spike Milligan, which was great fun. That was co-produced by Norma Farnes, who was sadly no longer with us, who was Spike's agent for a number of years. Lovely lady. She took me out for.
I don't wish to be distasteful, but has she fallen in the water?
Sorry, I fell in the water, and all that business. Yes, quite. She was lovely. She took me out for oysters at Fortnum and Mason.
I might not be old enough, but I know the reference.
Yeah,
well, you know the dissolution of the monasteries and the Renaissance. I mean, we weren't there. For Christ's sake. A question for Lloyd from Lloyd Beanie.
I will just. Sorry, I'll follow up on the answer. Sorry, but we are doing another tour of Hancock's Half Hour next year. So that's to answer the previous question. My apologies. Go on.
And you do. Again, I'm not spoiling, but I asked you on the phone because I said, who did you get in to do all the voices? Because there's a lot of sort of radio interaction. You said, well, I do them all. And I was like, Jesus, that was really impressive. I was a huge fan of Hancock, by the way. And for some reason, I became I've never met, but became sort of digital friends with Sarah Galton, Ray Galton's daughter.
Yes.
And she sent me, and I've got it enshrined, the scripts signed by Ray Galton and Alan Simpson.
Oh, how wonderful.
I'm like, which if you're not into it will mean nothing to you, but to me it was like, it was like the holy grail.
Yes.
Now, Lloyd is asking you this. Do you hate it when people do Kenneth Williams impersonations back to you?
You really can't ask that question. I've just done a naff Kenneth Williams impression. Beanie, how could you ask that?
Because he goes where everybody else fears to tread. That's why.
Good for him.
Right now, mate.
Beanies, meet the beanies. Right, come on.
I don't mind it too much. The good thing is that usually, without sort of blowing my own trumpet, it's usually a fairly half-assed attempt. Well done, Phil, by the way. And full marks for effort, dear boy. And
I'll tutor you properly later.
Right, all right.
But I'm able to come back with a rather cutting line to cut them back down to size, and they usually shut up. Usually. And
it hasn't noticed though.
No, noticed that we've gone very quiet.
and they usually shut up.
Maybe they see it as a sign of a compliment. Right, Chantal.
Of course they do.
Every week sits watching films and movies, TV shows. And I'm dying.
You're right there.
Don't mind Russ. Don't mind Russell. He's only choking.
Have some of my coffee, Russ, darling. There we are.
Oh, thank you very much. I don't think I would.
Have a sip.
What has come across your... look at this. We have to put this up. She hates it when I do this, but it's... Phil, you know what to do. It's Penny Horner.
Oh, Penny.
She hates when we do that. That's why we do it.
Oh,
anyway, Penny is saying, so glad
Colin
came.
To the Sergeant Major.
We're with the Raya. So glad Colin came.
Who was caught talking to her privates.
Thanks, Penny.
What?
What? Nothing. I got to say that the German Street Theatre, by the way, has had a belter of a run. They had Izzy Van Randwick, my little mate for the last God knows how many decades, with Dazzling Divas. If that ever comes back, grab. Got Colin this week with a cult figure. They're on fire at the German Street Theatre. They're absolutely on fire. Packed out houses. That's what you want to see. What has come across your television purview recently, Chantal?
Well, it's a funny old time of year, to be honest. This is not traditionally the time of the year that people are sitting inside watching the telly, other than the Lionesses getting that extraordinary 17 million audience last week, which was really extraordinary. So I've had to sort of dig a bit deeper. I went to a couple of movies. I'm not even going to bother telling you about those because I think it would just be wasting anybody's time to send you off to see something I haven't really
don't go to them for chance. What were they?
Well, one of them was the new Brad Pitt movie, which is
Runaway. Is it Runaway Train?
It features a runaway train, but it's not called Runaway Train. It's called Bullet Train. Bullet Train, which is a mess. I mean, if you love Brad Pitt and he's a good-looking guy, you just get this amazing Brad Pitt performance. But the film is a bit of a mess, to be honest. It's sort of aimed, I would say, at teenage boys. And I didn't quite know that when I went to the cinema the other night. So I started with that.
You made lots of new friends.
How did that work out for you, Chantal?
Yeah.
A lot of teenage boys in Fulham Broadway who thought it was hilarious. But I'm probably not the right audience for it. Anyway, but he looks wonderful, great physicality, but the story's just silly. And then suddenly, when there's a snake on the train, I thought, hang on a second, haven't we seen this all before?
That sounds very familiar.
It's not one for us. It's not one for people like us, I don't think. And then I went with great hope in my heart to see Where the Crawdads Sing, which was the book last year that
number one book on the Sunday Times list at the moment.
Everybody was reading it. And actually, the book is beautifully
Who's
written.
got the siren behind them?
Sorry about that.
I'm in South London. It's the ice cream van. That's our ice cream van phone.
Apologies. I'm in a busy part of South London and every window in the house is open. So I'm sorry about the noise.
Good Lord.
But Where the Crawdads Sing, it was like that sort of, Captain Corelli's Mandolin last year. Everybody watched it. And I had great hopes. But actually, I was disappointed. It features the lovely actress, Daisy Edgar-Jones, who was in Normal People, that great series that everybody watched about two students at Trinity Dublin and won loads of awards last year. And she is brilliant in it, but the story doesn't hold up. It's actually very true to the book, but it's just, you don't drown in the beauty of it in the way that you do in the book. So those aside,
Can I ask a punter's question?
Ask a punter's question.
Where the Crawdads Sing, it's about as deep south as you can go. And this week I met some Americans I've been chatting to for ages, and the daughter is from North Carolina, and I needed an interpreter. I am not joking.
Wow.
We were at the Soho Whiskey Club. You could have cut her accent she couldn't understand a word I was saying. Yeah. And I thought she was joking.
Does that happen often?
Yeah.
What? What's that?
Does that happen often?
Yeah. Not really. Not in my life. I have nothing going on at the moment. It's a blank canvas. Why did they choose I'm going to say British, English, Irish, whatever, British actress when there's about 1 million people from America who could do the part? I'm not saying she didn't do a good role. I just am curious why.
It's beyond me. I didn't really get it. I mean, to me, I don't think she was terribly well cast, to be honest. And she is a brilliant young actress, really, really good. But this wasn't the right role for her, I don't think. I mean, she was everywhere. About 18 months ago, everybody wanted to book her because she was in this breakout series on the BBC.
It's a bit like, why didn't you get? I mean, that casting is like, if they didn't get Colin to play Kenneth Williams, they could have got Lenny Henry.
Yeah.
That would have been like, what? I'm sorry, what? That would have been just ridiculous. I just don't get it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be based, you're right, it's supposed to be based in South Carolina. She doesn't quite carry the accent off. It was actually shot in Louisiana, I think, which...
where the alligators are mean.
Has better tax breaks than
tax break? God, you need it. They pay you just to go to Louisiana, I would imagine. Not high on my bucket list.
Oh, Well, at the other end of the spectrum, I then thought, hang on a second, there's a series that has come to its 7th year on the BBC. And I thought, let's go to try and cool myself down. Let's go to Shetland. And I picked up with series 7 of Shetland, which has been a big success for the BBC. This is the last series, not of the whole thing, but it's the last series with the lead actor, who is called Doug Henschel, who plays Detective Perez, who's always sorting out murders on Shetland. Seemingly, there are lots of dead bodies on Shetland, but it's always very beautifully shot. Doug Henschel is really good. It is coming back for an 8th series, but nobody knows who's taking over as the lead character. But if you want something reliable, you know it's going to be a good story that will last across 6 episodes, then pick up on series 7 on the BBC.
This is why Phil, I and you and Colin live in London. Because if you go somewhere quiet and peaceful like Midsummer or Shetland, you're going to die.
Well, I'm in Brighton at the moment, so I've broken the link.
I'm speaking as someone who lives in Hertfordshire. Believe me, I dice with death every time I leave the front door.
The mystery of the body in Costco, aisle 17, will never be solved.
No.
Next to the giant pack of toilet rolls. Anyway, there we go. Phil and I have
that's the reason why the area is named thus, is because every single time it's done for a crime, they say Watford was used. So anyway. I'll work on it and come back to you. Don't worry.
Thank you very much.
So,
Colin, have you seen anything recently that you really like? Apart from your own show, obviously.
Yes, exactly. Just running through that in my own head every night, thinking, God, what's my next line? I have occasionally, because I'm based in Brighton at the moment, and I am at the mercy of the laughingly named Gatwick Express getting back from London. I mean, there's a contradiction in terms.
Do you commute every day?
Wow,
I do. Yes.
Oh my God!
But it's only an hour on the trip. Well, I say technically,
it's only an hour.
It's more like a Wagner opera in terms of length.
No,
it's ridiculous. Southern Rail are the biggest joke and Thameslink of a rail company you could ever expect. So I do often arm myself with about 50,000 hours worth of movies, radio, television programs on the off chance that they're going to dump me in some armpit place. And then I'll just have to, while away the hours watching something. So I've been rewatching, because I know that the next series is coming out. It's not a film, a television series of What We Do in the Shadows, which is a wonderful series. I don't
know it.
Oh, so it's that wonderful New Zealand director who wrote, I can never pronounce his name.
Taika Waititi?
Yes, of course, Taika Waititi, who directed Jojo Rabbit. Yeah. It was a film that he did a few years ago about the everyday life of modern vampires.
That's why I don't know it.
Oh, right. You're not a big horror fan?
I'm not a vampire girl.
No. Oh, right. Okay. Well, it's a great little indie film. And they developed it into a series. I think it's on series 4 at the moment with Matt Berry. And forgive me, I forget the other actor's name. Okay. That's great fun.
As in Toast of London, Matt Berry?
As in Toast of London, Matt Berry. It's on the BBC.
Hello, Stephen. Can you hear me? It's Clem Fandango.
Yes, that's it. Yes, I can hear you, Clem Fandango. Lady Gaga and all that. Yeah. So I've been watching a bit of that. I did see a lovely little indie. I'm looking on my phone at the moment.
Ray Purchase.
Ray bloody Purchase. The wonderful...
and Tracy Ann Oberman. Tracy Ann Oberman, who plays Mrs. Purchase. Just hysterically funny.
Oh, I did see a wonderful little indie film last night called, the other day, called The Vast of Night, which was, it came out in, he said, looking in on his phone, 2015 it came out. And it's, again, a wonderful little indie sort of science fiction piece based in the 1950s America. And again, it's one of those examples of a film where obviously the budget was quite low. And so in order to get around the financial constraints, they actually work creatively. And as opposed to throwing money at a project, they really try some interesting techniques with camera. They're not afraid to have these long close-ups.
Is that the one where he's a DJ at a college? If I got the wrong film.
That's it. That's the one.
Oh, that's the one. Okay, I like that film.
Yes, I thought that was fantastic. And, just one of those little films that pops up and you think, oh, you're trying something different. And it's a real pleasure to see something other than just a massive blockbuster or something with a lot of money behind it that's being a bit lazy. That's not relying on special effects. It's relying on a character-driven narrative. And it was a lovely little piece that I saw, so I'd highly recommend it.
It's a quirky and good film. Chantal, I got a question for you. You have to wear your professional OBE, former CEO of BAFTA Los Angeles hat. I asked Colin Vaines when we meet every Saturday. He gave me his version. I'd love your version.
Okay.
They have just scrapped, having made for $90 million, they've scrapped Batgirl. It'll never be seen.
I know.
Gone, thrown away in a vault, will never be streamed. And this is the important thing to know: it'll never be streamed. How do you feel about stuff like that when they do?
Well, it sounds as though we will probably never know why, and it sounds like it was a hot mess. Because to scrap that sort of value of product is virtually unheard of. I have no idea. I don't know what was going on the inside at all. But it sounds like they felt that it was not going to make its money back and that it was inappropriate for our times. And actually, times are changing so quickly in terms of characterization and what people are allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say and how they have to behave in a particular way, that maybe they felt that Batgirl was just no longer appropriate in a sort of tight outfit that, I mean, I've no idea simply, but I will look into it and I'll try and get some
Colin came. I won't go into the whole Colin thing because it's about an hour's conversation. It didn't test well, number one. And there was a change of boss. So, new boss comes in, sweeps clean, blah, 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 blah. And of course, it's a $90 million tax loss, which it's just about money. It's just bean counters, isn't it? But I feel terribly sorry, and I don't know the name of the actress. Am I supposed to? Can I say actress?
Yes. You can to me.
Can I say actress to you, Colin?
Well, you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we can say lionesses.
Say whatever the hell you want.
Thank you. Yes, because we're allowed to say lionesses, but we can't say actress.
No, well, that's why when I realized last week they were talking about lionesses, I thought, hang on a second, actress I think is absolutely fine.
Yes.
Because the lionesses don't mind being called lionesses, as far as I know. Yeah. So I think actress is fine.
Yeah.
And it comes down to personal preference as well, doesn't it? How you wish to be addressed. So there we are.
Yeah.
Phil likes to be called Lord Dave of Hertfordshire. And if you could, Colin, that is how he likes to be.
The problem is, I mean, there are certain things that one might like, but doesn't necessarily mean it's true. But it's all right. So I'll take it.
In my head, if I like it, it's true. That's how I get through. It must be true.
I mean, listen.
I do feel sorry.
For me, I find it baffling though that we just live in a day and age though where people seem to sort of battle with the concept of basic biology. That's more the point.
That is 50 shows in one thing, and if the wrong people heard the show, we would be trolled. And you have to say, really, I don't care. You're an
Bring
idiot.
it on.
Stop it.
I'm regularly trolled on Twitter, and I love it. I think it's hilarious.
You do. Phil is much braver than me. Everyone thinks it's the other way around, but Phil is actually much ruder than I am. Hard to believe, but Phil is much braver. And when he gets trolled, and there was some,
I don't think it's that hard to believe, to be honest.
Okay, and there were some really nasty tweets. Now I wouldn't have retweeted that. You said, "Ta-da! Look what they think of me. They think I'm shit," and you were just putting these tweets up. And I'm going, Phil, why? What are you doing? I love it.
I think it's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hysterical.
Phil really does think it's hilarious. He's not putting on a show. I mean, he didn't have to. I think it's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary. Anybody else dog sitting with two dogs today?
Could they
make the dogs have gone back now?
No. I've got two here. And Chantal, I want you, with all your influence, to get a film made where the leading man goes into his kitchen to just make a sandwich, and you have two faces the whole time, like, but we haven't eaten. You haven't eaten for 20 seconds. Shut up.
Yeah.
It's true.
The two of them sit there.
I can definitely audition for that role. I've had a number. Yes, I've got a lot of experience of that.
Oh,
It's
okay. I'm not
here we are.
We got
on
4
the
minutes.
Twitter front. On the Twitter front, I found the
go.
conversation that I was arguing with most recently. And this is maybe another program I might have been covering. And some person who has very bravely named themselves on Twitter Eastern Eagle, because I'm perfectly sure that that is the name they were given when they were born.
Yeah, Eastern Eagle, yeah. Eastern
Eagle.
Barry Eagles, their full name.
Yes, absolutely. Can you imagine the conversation now? You can imagine his parents now. The baby's born in the hospital. Oh, he's so cute. We'll call him Eastern Eagle. Anyway, right. Anyway, so the conversation went thus. It says, this was when I was covering a show on another station. Managed to last 10 minutes listening to this miserable, whinging, whining, negative individual. Not sure I've ever heard such a depressing host on a UK radio show. Keep away. You'll shoot yourself after 15 minutes of this guy.
No.
And my response was, "Thank you for listening." And then the other was awful depressive. You did well. I managed 5 minutes. Why do radio stations put such people on shows who want to destroy the country they live in? I don't think he could have been listening very clearly, because actually
I don't think he was listening to your show.
Standing up for the country. Actually standing up for the country.
Here's a great thing. Maybe one day Colin could do a stand-up cult Phil.
Well, I basically my
Colin.
My retort was on the contrary. I think you'll find that I was one of the proudest Brits out there, and also I'd be interested to hear or watch your latest show. He didn't reply to that. Sounds like I might learn a thing or two. You see. Actually, no, I lie. He did come back. He just said, "Mate." I hate it when people call me mate. I'm not his mate. Believe me. Wouldn't hang around with him if my life depended on it. Mate, just sold my 2-year, 11-month-old broking company for $23.4 million. And I replied saying, it's absolutely disturbing that despite $23.4 million, he goes on in his tweet, you see, to say, right, you ready for this? Maybe you should just admit you are, a communist in the UK is excrement. My response was slightly worrying that based on $23.4 million, you didn't realize it's your as opposed to your. And rest assured, I'm not a communist. So I think he got the message after that because he backed off. So bring it on if they want to fight on Twitter. I love it.
I never ever engage.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I did it once when I was in the US, and I posted, and I thought, in my role as CEO of BAFTA, that I would say nice things about British productions. And I had actually just watched what I thought was a very good news program from BBC World, fronted by Catty Kay. And I just said, terrific show today. Lovely to, get an English point of view on the news or something. And I then suddenly got this invective coming back in the other direction about BBC, communism, who the hell do you think you are? And I went, I'm out of this conversation.
Yeah.
Well, it's so good to know that I'm in the company of a fellow communist, Chantal.
Yeah. Well, there we are.
You see, Colin, this is how it starts. They look normal, but they've got the sleeper cells. Hertfordshire is a hotbed of sleeper cells for the commies.
So is Brighton. Don't you worry, Russ.
Oh, Brighton, well, yes. Down here. They'd be a bit too camp in Brighton. I don't think they'd do much.
Oh, you're treading on dangerous ground there. Well, a mixture of greens and reds here.
No, it's the green. Oh, the greens. God,
lots of greens in Brighton.
We do have a lovely Caroline Lucas.
Time's up, peeps.
This is the show. So much. Grab a ticket if you possibly can at the German Street Theatre. Chantal, lovely dress. Lovely to see you, Colin. Good luck with the rest of the run. We'll be back Monday. Until then, remember, you matter.